I do think when you put differences together, it's a very creative environment. You don't have to copy it, you can just appreciate the differences and be interested in it.
在波动的海洋中，以智慧和知识明辨方向，顺水行船，这是水手的原则。而在瞬息波动的全球局势中，同样需运用知识去分析、理解变化，寻找驱动力量。跨越南北半球，中澳知识纷至沓来，彰显其格局。每一点滴的进展都是缓慢而艰巨的，但正是每一点滴汇成潮水的方向。近年来，中国对澳直接投资屡创新高，澳大利亚已成为中国对外直接投资第2大目的国。从中澳自贸协定签署以来，5年间，澳大利亚商品的进出口量得到了跨越式的增长。如今的中澳贸易关系能够达到这样的高度，与这位澳大利亚前贸易与投资部长安德鲁罗伯密不可分。3年前，从政坛到商界，罗伯完成了身份的转变。领域虽已不同，但他依旧为中澳贸易的良好发展做着自己的努力。
So I want to know, how does the chapter change the Australian people's life?
Well, in the same way, we've seen a lot more production going into China, right? And also, China is increasingly demanding of certain quality, which they should. They're the customer.
Definitely.
Right? They're the customer. So, but Australia are changing a lot of business practice so that the foodstuffs are produced in a way that China prefers, right? So, firstly, people are more prosperous. There's a lot of investment coming also out of China into the supply chain, right? And as well, we've got, of course, 1.3 million Chinese Australians who now live in Australia. Now, that's 6% of our population are Chinese Australians. Now, that's made a huge difference to helping develop trade because there's over 1 million people who understand both an Australian culture and Chinese culture, and it makes doing business a lot easier.
Yeah, it's pretty easier and it's amazing. So how about your personal life? So you have more Chinese product in your home right now?
Well, it's for me. I mean, I've been to China 50 times now.
50 times.
And 30 times in the last 3 years since I left politics and doing commercial work. So I've developed a great interest and a great respect for the Chinese people and for the culture. It's so much depth and history. So it's very fascinating for me, and I enjoy learning more and more. But secondly, learning how to do business in China, it's different to Australia. And for Chinese learning how to do business in Australia, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes some time. But if you've got mutual respect between people, then it works out well. So my life, I've spent a lot more time focused on China. I've been 30 times in the last 3 years to China and to many provinces.
Wow.
And,
so which is your favorite place?
There's so many differences, but Xiamen is is a place I've had some very nice times. It's like a holiday resort at Xiamen. But also, of course, Shanghai is one of my favourite cities in the world, and I do go to Beijing quite a lot. But Guangzhou and Suzhou and all of these cities, it's fascinating when you can see how much development is taking place. You know, not just in one place, but in hundreds of places around China. So I do like to see people, their lives improving. And in China, every time you go there, it's developed more and more and more.
So among your 50 times visit to China, so what do you think the biggest change to the China?
It's the growth, obviously. I mean, the growth of that, but it's the modernisation, right? It's not just, and on such a large scale. I don't know where you go. They're not all at the same level as Shanghai, but they're coming. They are getting closer and closer in terms of the development and the modernisation. You know, there's that the Shanghai girl is that expression. I mean, they're
really?
International. You could be anywhere in the world, in many of the cities now in China, and if you only go back 10 years, you couldn't say that. But the speed with which China has modernised and caught up with the world in so many areas, the only area that needs attention, I think, in particular, is the health sector.
Oh, that's cool. So what kind of the Chinese food do you like the most?
Oh, the food, yeah. Well, the Sichuan, the spicy food.
Oh, you like spicy
food? Yes, is probably my favourite. But I've enjoyed banquets all over China.
So you went to the Sichuan province before, right?
Several times, yeah, to different events and different business deals, yeah.
Australia is kind of like the similar culture like the European and the United States, but the location is more closer to Asia.
No, it's an opportunity. Because it's an opportunity, and there are quite significant differences because our background was we were settled by the British in the first instance, and then we had a lot of European settlers came to Australia. So it's got a European background in Australia, which is obviously quite different to China, right? But I do think when you put differences together, it's a very creative environment. For Australians to be exposed to Chinese culture, and we're now exposed to quite a lot in Australia because there are a lot of Chinese Australians now, but there's also a lot more Australians travelling to China, not just for business but for pleasure. And similarly, there's a lot of Chinese travelling to Australia, like 2 million last year travelled to Australia as tourists. Now all of that, it's very healthy, I think, to see what other people are doing and how they do it, and to gain an appreciation. You know, you don't have to copy it. You can just appreciate the differences and be interested in it. But as I say, I think a lot of it, if you put differences together, it does act as a catalyst for new ideas, new creative approaches. Because the thing is, also with China and Australia, what China does best, we need. Okay, and what we do best, you know, agriculture, resources and energy, education, those things China needs. Right? So we're very complementary. That's why this trade deal that was done in 2015 has been so successful, is because we're not competing. we are looking to benefit from one another.
Definitely. It's kind of like
Excuse me.
a pretty comprehensive cooperation between two countries.
Yeah, it's a very comprehensive, it's not just products. A lot of trade deals are just to do with products, which is fine. But this time it's services, so health services, education services, water management services, you name it, hundreds of services, financial services. There's a lot of concessions that we both made to one another in all of these areas, so that you're seeing now that movement of services between our two countries.
How do you see Australia and China, the trade relations in the next 5 years?
Growing stronger and stronger, I think, yes. It's, as I said, there's lots of things which are really reinforcing the continued growth and exposure. Partly it's need. China needs more and more produce, needs opportunities. there's lots of things we can do in cooperation. If we get involved more fully in the Belt and Road, I think there's so much of our business can work in partnership with Chinese businesses to develop Belt and Road programs in those countries. So I do think that, look, we are two countries where I think people basically like one another. You know, we've had, in the last 25 years, the biggest growth in Australian population has been Chinese Australians coming in and living here. And it's been, we have a country of multi-cultures, many cultures, and over different periods we've had different groups of people come from different countries. The last 25 years, the largest group has been the Chinese coming into Australia. And they're now the biggest cohort of expats from any country in the world, and now the biggest is China. In Australia, 6% of our population now are Chinese, but the integration into our community has been seamless. There've been no issues. You know, people get on well. Chinese work hard. They love their families. There are a lot of values that Australians share, Chinese share. So I think all of those factors will mean that as we become more familiar with one another and more appreciative of the differences in many cases, it only leads, I think, to more and more engagement, whether it be social activities, sport, but business, study, you name it.
英国最伟大的首相丘吉尔的心中住着一条黑犬。心理学家认为，他们所表现出的政治理性、对现实精准的判断，很可能与其长期被抑郁困扰相关。作为公众人物，公开抑郁症是难以启齿的，但是罗伯做到了。他将自己43年来被黑犬困扰的日子和与之对抗的经历记录了下来。工作上，他和多方斡旋；生活上，他同病魔战斗。在与抑郁症的对抗中，罗伯打了一场漂亮的反击战。
I know you are not only a great minister, but you are a great writer. You have a book. You have a book. It's called The Black Dog Days, right?
That's right.
And it's called Public Life and Private Demons. So why did you pick this name?
Because it's a story of 43 years of my life. I had, and I still manage it, but I'm in much better shape. But for 43 years I had a depressive condition which affected me in the mornings very badly. But I hid it, like there's hundreds of thousands of people in Australia, and I know in China who've got some form of depression.
Right.
But because of the stigma that attaches to that condition, a lot of people hide it. They smile, they sound like they're the life of the party when actually privately they're feeling very bad. So I had this problem for 43 years, and then I decided to do something about it and get professional help and see what if I could change my life in that sense, and it did. So I decided once I'd beaten it, or got to manage it at least, that would be a good idea to let other people know about it so they might do the same thing. So I wrote a book.
What makes you come to the realization that you have to comforting the private demons instead of just avoiding it?
A point in my life I was being asked to consider running for leadership of the party when I was a politician. I knew that I had this issue that it would make it very difficult if I agreed to try and run for leadership. So in the end I decided I better confront my problem and see can I put it behind me. But it meant that I had to go public because I was already a public figure. So if I wanted to take 3 months off to find the answer, I had to explain why. So for a lot of people it's very difficult to say that they've got depression It's because of the stigma in the community, and it's unfortunate because it's just another illness. Like if you break your arm or you get something wrong with you, it's depression's just another illness like that, and people can get to a point where they can manage it or beat it, right? So everyone should be encouraged, but usually they need help, they need understanding, and they need support from their families, etc. But it's a big problem in all of our communities, and I think it's going to be one of the big issues in the next several decades to beat, to get on top of.
抑郁症从未打倒过安德鲁罗伯，在他绝望中寻求希望，学会自我解救，勇于直面病魔。这是罗伯的人生信条，也彰显了他的格局。勇于直面困境，这同样也是中澳贸易关系发展的格局所在。纵使前方道路被黑暗覆盖，只要心中有光，前行的脚步总会寻到光明的彼岸。